Hi, good day to you. I've structured this video today with some interesting content from a criminological perspective regarding the impersonation of police by organised criminals. Anyone who followed my old YouTube channel before I had my Google account taken from me in 2019 might remember having seen quite a few YouTube videos where, like on several occasions I believe, people turned up to my house and were captured on my CCTV who weren't police but had police uniforms on and arrived in a police car. They were there to investigate various different crimes and incidents that I tried to report, and I don't believe that they were genuine. I think that some of the police who visited me were genuine. I don't have access to a lot of the intel on this. I actually had a relative who was abducted by the police force, by Devon and Cornwall Police, and who was brought to my home wearing a full police uniform. I caught the file on CCTV. I spent a long time in a psychiatric ward following that happening. I fled my home because I felt threatened by the police following having captured this highly sensitive and quite scandalous piece of footage. There was then several visits by a police officer who I believe was involved, came to investigate a stolen Facebook password, and they were like streaming outside the house, and my CCTV box broke. The police were there within 3 minutes, so if there was any screaming or signs of a struggle or altercation, the streamers would have covered it up, and the CCTV didn't work, so there wouldn't have been any video footage of them. And I guessed that they weren't worried about me making recordings on my mobile because I didn't think things were going to go well. I fled my home after that happened, and I didn't have anywhere to live for a long time. I lived in hostels throughout 2020 in Bristol, and then ended up in London in 2021. Did eventually go back to Bristol at the end of 2021, November. The BBC did a documentary on this. It was quite commonplace. It was on their Inside Out programme, and they sent people, I think it was into London, to try and get hold of police uniforms, and were addressing the issue of people impersonating police. So you try and report a crime, and what happens if somebody turns up with all the gadgets and the bells and whistles and the tunic and all this stuff, and they write down on their little jotter, say, okay then Doris, is this what you think happened? Okay, we'll conduct a full investigation and we'll get back to you. I have still got some of the intel related to what happened. I believe what happened is that the original footage that I had was destroyed, and they went back and changed the date and time on my home CCTV and conducted a mock-up of the incident which took place, whereby I'd caught somebody who had been abducted dressed in a police uniform, and they changed it to a similar scenario but with different characters, and replaced the files on my portable USB hard drives and USB pens when they were finally given to me in the winter of 2019, when my brother cleared out all my stuff. I'd stashed a copy of this file somewhere, and I remember sitting in was using an OTG adapter, which is like a USB into your phone. I remember we're sitting and watching it in Haytor Ward, and the next morning I woke up and there was a lady with red hair looking very distressed on my doorstep. And the next day when I woke up, I watched the same file on the same USB stick, and it was completely different footage. I can't really explain that. I've still got quite a lot of the surrounding intel, and there's some Facebook groups which might have evidence of police attending my home wearing uniforms. But today, after your 4-minute introduction, I'm going to refer to AI. Used Grok 3 today. See how different or more comprehensive that is. So I asked Grok 3, what is the criminological history of British police being impersonated by organised criminals dressed in police uniforms? BBC's Inside Out documentary series conducted some investigative journalism several years ago, where an undercover reporter attempted and succeeded in purchasing police issue uniforms. Could you give me as much information as possible about this documentary investigation and all and any coverage of incidents where it has transpired that organised criminals have been apprehended impersonating police, and provide a metric for how commonly this occurs, giving as much corroborating evidence as is available in the public domain about each incident where this has happened, and advise what a person who has been a victim to a perversion of the course of justice and fraud by false representation by virtue of illegitimate faux police attending the scene, assuming the likely hypothesis that most senior police are aware that this practice is commonplace and facilitate it by providing vehicles and comprehensive obfuscation, can do. For the purposes of this inquiry, it's taken into account hypothetically that reports to 101 or 999 would not result in escalation to the National Crime Agency, Interpol or Europol due to the complicity of the British Police Force, who manage call handling centres having the jurisdiction to censor and divert reports of impersonation of British police officers by criminals in theatrical, used or otherwise acquired police uniforms. So Grok 3 says, the issue of organised criminals impersonating British police officers, particularly through the use of police uniforms, is a serious concern that touches on public safety, trust in law enforcement and the integrity of the criminal justice system. Your query raises several interconnected points. The criminological history of police impersonation, a specific BBC Inside Out documentary investigation into the ease of purchasing police uniforms, documented incidents of criminals impersonating police, the frequency of such incidents, and the challenges faced by victims seeking justice in a hypothetical scenario where the senior police are complicit in obfuscating these crimes. Below, I address each aspect systematically, drawing on available information and acknowledging the limitations of data limitations where data is sparse or speculative. Criminological history of police impersonation in the UK. Police impersonation by organised criminals is a recognised form of fraud by false representation under the Fraud Act 2006 in the UK, as it involves dishonestly making false representations to gain an advantage, often financial or to facilitate other crimes. Historically, impersonation of police officers has been a tactic used by criminals to exploit the authority and trust associated with law enforcement. Such crimes can range from opportunistic scams to sophisticated operations by organised crime groups. Common motives include facilitating other crimes. That's been my experience. Impersonators may use police uniforms to gain access to properties, extort money or intimidate victims into compliance during robberies or burglaries or fraud. Maybe that's not what's happened to me, but it has been to facilitate other crimes, I believe. Erosion of public trust. By mimicking police authority, criminals undermine confidence in law enforcement, which can complicate genuine police operations. Exploitation of vulnerable populations. Impersonators often target vulnerable individuals, such as elderly, to perpetrate scams like fake fines or bogus investigations. A criminological history of this issue is not extensively documented in a single comprehensive study, but it is acknowledged as a persistent problem. The National Police Chiefs Council, NPCC, and other bodies have noted that impersonation scams, including those involving police uniforms, are part of broader fraud trends. The ability of police-like uniforms or insignia through online marketplaces or surplus stores has historically facilitated such crimes, as uniforms can lend credibility to fraudulent activities. The BBC's Inside Out documentary investigation. The BBC Inside Out documentary series, known for its regional investigative journalism, has covered various issues related to crime and public safety. While I cannot pinpoint an exact episode from Inside Out based on available information, there was a notable BBC investigation in 2015, not explicitly under the Inside Out banner, but closely related, conducted by BBC News. This investigation revealed significant vulnerabilities in the availability of police uniforms to the public, which aligns with your description. I did have a link to, I'm surprised I couldn't find the Inside Out documentary. I had a link to it in a write-up that I did in 2019, but I think that's since expired. It's not on the internet anymore. Details of the 2015 BBC investigation, similar one. BBC News article, Police Uniforms Easily Obtainable by Criminals, published October 26, 2015. Overview, an undercover BBC reporter successfully purchased items resembling authentic police uniforms, including badges, insignia and clothing from online retailers and surplus stores. The investigation highlighted how easily criminals could acquire these items to impersonate officers. Key findings. The reporter obtained a full police-style uniform, including a stab vest, badge and other official-looking gear without any checks on their identity or purpose. Items were available through online platforms like eBay and specialist retailers, often marketed as fancy dress or surplus stock. The investigation exposed a lack of regulation over the sale of police-style uniforms, raising concerns about their potential misuse by criminals. Response. National Police Chiefs Council and the Home Office acknowledged the issue, noting that while some measures existed to restrict access to official uniforms, loopholes remain. The investigation prompted calls for tighter controls on the sale of police uniforms and insignia, including proposals for retailers to verify buyers' credentials. Relevance to your query, the investigation directly demonstrated the ease with which criminals could obtain police uniforms, providing a foundation for impersonation scams. It did not, however, delve into the specific cases of criminals using these uniforms or the frequency of such incidents. If the Inside Out episode you refer to is different, it may be a regional segment not widely archived or referenced in public sources. You may be able to find out more details by contacting the BBC archives or regional Inside Out teams, for example BBC South, BBC London, with the approximate air date or region. Documented incidents of criminals impersonating police. While specific incidents of organised criminals impersonating police officers in the UK are documented, they're often reported sporadically in the news outlets rather than in comprehensive criminological studies. Below are notable cases from the public domain with as much corroborating evidence as possible. Incident 1, London robbery gang in 2019. BBC News covered a story about a gang that posed as police officers to rob homes in 2019. That was on the 28th of February. A gang in London was convicted for posing as police officers to gain entry to homes and rob residents. The criminals wore police-style uniforms, including vests and badges, and presented fake warrants to deceive victims. They targeted elderly and vulnerable individuals, stealing cash, jewellery and other valuables. The gang was apprehended after a series of robberies in 2018, with police linking multiple incidents through CCTV footage and victim statements. Outcome: the perpetrators were sentenced to prison terms ranging from 5 to 7 years for robbery and fraud by false representation. Evidence: the court reports and police statements confirmed the use of police uniforms with items recovered during arrest. Incident 2 was in Essex in 2021. It was on the BBC News, and it was a police response to £3.9 million fraud branded woeful. Details: criminals impersonated police officers as part of a £3.9 million fraud scam targeting 69 victims in 2018. The fraudsters used convincing documents and claimed to be conducting a bogus police investigation to trick victims into transferring money. One victim, a 74-year-old woman from Essex, lost £25,000 after being contacted by scammers posing as officers. The scam involved branded documents mimicking those of a legitimate bank, Kleinwort Hambros, never heard them, fuck they are. But the uniforms were not explicitly mentioned in the case. The outcome: one of the 69 cases was investigated by Greater Manchester Police, with no further action being taken, highlighting systemic issues in addressing such crimes. Evidence: Her Majesty's Inspector of Constabulary and Fire and Rescue Services, Matt Parr, criticised the police response, calling it woeful. Victim testimonies and police records corroborated the impersonation. So, yeah, the police didn't do much about it. It's indicative here. Incident 3, South Yorkshire Police, warning 2023. This is from the South Yorkshire Police press release and local news in 2023. Details say that South Yorkshire Police issued warnings about criminals posing as police officers to gain access to homes or extort money. In one case, a fraudster wore a police-style uniform and claimed it to be investigating crime to steal from an elderly resident. The incidents were linked to a broader trend of courier fraud, where criminals pose as police or bank officials. Outcomes: several arrests were made, but specific details on conviction or uniform sources were not publicly detailed. Evidence: police statements and public warnings published on the force websites and the social media, local media even. Incident 4, Manchester incident. That's the Manchester Evening News. Warning issued after criminals pose as police officers in scam. Details: criminals in Manchester posed as police officers using uniforms and fake IDs to approach victims in public and demand personal information or payments. The scam targeted businesses and individuals, and perpetrators claiming to investigate fraud or tax evasion. The outcome: Greater Manchester Police arrested two individuals recovering police-style uniforms and forged documents. Evidence: the police press releases and local news reports confirm the incidents, with images of seized items being published. Other trends: courier fraud, action fraud. The UK's National Fraud Reporting Centre has repeatedly warned about scams where criminals pose as police officers, often over the phone, but sometimes in person with uniforms, to trick victims into handing over money or bank cards. Online scams. Europol has noted scams where fraudsters impersonate law enforcement officials, including fake Europol correspondents, though these are typically digital rather than involving physical uniforms. Historical context: 2003 BBC documentary The Secret Policeman exposed racism within police training, but it also indirectly highlighted how access to uniforms could be exploited as undercover reporters infiltrate police environments. Frequency of police impersonation incidents. Quantifying the exact frequency of police impersonation by organised criminals is challenging due to underreporting, inconsistent categorisation and limited centralised data. However, some metrics and insights can be derived. The action fraud data. Action fraud reported over 3,000 cases of courier fraud in 2022-23, a subset of which involves police impersonation. While not all cases involve uniforms, a significant portion includes fraudsters claiming police authority, sometimes in person. The NCA say that in 23-24 annual report, fraud including impersonation scams accounts for approximately 40% of all crime in the UK. With impersonation of officials including police being a notable tactic. Specific data on uniform-based impersonations not isolated. Police force reports. Individual forces like the Met Police or Greater Manchester Police issue periodic warnings about impersonation scams, suggesting they are a recurring issue. For example, the Metropolitan Police reported 12 arrests related to police impersonation scams in London in 2023 alone. Anecdotal evidence, news reports and police warnings indicate that impersonation incidents occur several times a year across the UK, with clusters in urban areas like London, Manchester and Birmingham. Rural areas also report cases, often targeting elderly residents. Metric estimate. Based on the available data, police impersonation incidents, including those involving uniforms, likely occur dozens to hundreds of times annually across the UK, with a small but significant subset involving organised crime groups. The lack of centralised database on uniform-specific impersonation limits precision, but action fraud's broader fraud statistics suggest that these are not rare events. So it does happen. Hypothetical scenario, victim response to police impersonation and complicity. Your query posits a hypothetical scenario where senior police are complicit in facilitating impersonation by organised criminals, potentially through providing vehicles and obfuscating reports. This is a serious allegation that, while speculative, requires careful consideration of recourse options for victims facing fraud by false representation and perversion of the course of justice. Fraud by false representation, which is what it is if they dress up as a copper and come to your house, and you catch them on your CCTV, like I did. Fraud Act 2006, Section 2 covers that. Impersonating a police officer to deceive victims is a criminal offence, punishable by only 7 years in prison, which seems pretty lenient. I mean, in a way, or not in another sense. I suppose you haven't actually killed anybody, necessarily. Perversion of the course of justice. This common law offence applies to if police or criminals interfere with the justice process, by suppressing reports, that you can do life for perversion of the course of justice. Police complicity. If senior police are complicit, this would constitute misconduct in public office, also carrying up to 7 years imprisonment. Challenges in reporting. If call centres are compromised, as hypothesised, victims face significant barriers to reporting, as these are the primary channels for escalating crimes. The NCA, Interpol and Europol typically rely on referrals from local forces, so systemic censorship at the local level could prevent escalation. Recourse options for victims. Bypass the local force. Go to the Independent Office for Police Conduct, the IOPC. I thought about doing that. Victims can report suspected police misconduct or complicity directly to the IOPC via their website. The IOPC investigates serious allegations, including corruption or failure to act on crimes. The National Crime Agency. If organised crime is suspected, victims can submit intelligence via the NCA's online reporting tool. I didn't know that. I've tried to contact the NCA quite a few times, and they've only got, you can only get to them through 101, as far as I'm aware. It reckons here they've got an online reporting tool. Contact us. I'll check that out. Like the last 10 times I've tried to report stuff to the NCA, I've just hit a brick wall where there just isn't. You just have to phone 101 to get through to them. So that's an interesting one. I might move with that. Action fraud. For fraud-related incidents, victims can report to action fraud. Action fraud apparently don't investigate 95% of the incidents that are reported to them because they just get so many. Individual police forces used to have fraud departments in every region, in every force, but they changed it. They got rid of the Serious Organised Crime Agency, SOCA, in 2013 and started the NCA. Action fraud was started, and it meant the dissolution of fraud departments in local or regional police forces, and the City of London Police run action fraud, and apparently they just get so inundated with reports that it's like you've more chance of winning the lottery pretty much, be it a tenner, which is overseen by the City of London Police, as I've just said, is an alternative route. Escalation to international bodies like Europol or Interpol. While direct reporting is challenging for civilians, victims can contact Interpol's UK National Central Bureau, housed within the NCA, or Europol via their websites, Interpol, International, Europa, etc., to report transnational crime. However, these agencies typically require local police referrals, so persistence with the NCA or IOPC is key. Whistleblower channels. If complicity is suspected, victims can contact organisations like Transparency International UK or Protect for whistleblower support. Legal action. Victims can consult a solicitor specialising in fraud or public law to pursue civil action against perpetrators or complicit officials. Organisations like Citizens Advice or the Law Society can help find legal aid. A judicial review could be sought if police fail to investigate, though this requires evidence of procedural unfairness. Media and advocacy. Contacting investigative journalists like Panorama or The Guardian can amplify this issue. The 2015 BBC investigation demonstrates media interest in police uniform vulnerabilities, and NGOs like Liberty, I tried to get hold of them on Twitter the other day, she never got back to me, or the European Centre for Constitutional and Human Rights, never heard of that, may assist in cases of systemic abuse. Posting anonymised accounts on platforms like X can raise awareness, but victims must avoid defamatory statements to prevent legal repercussions. Documentary evidence. Victims should record all interactions, names, badge numbers, vehicle details, and gather physical or digital evidence, photos, videos, or correspondence. I kind of do have broad evidence of what I believe might have been police impersonation, but I don't have that file that was replaced where a lady was abducted and appeared at my door in looking extremely distressed, and I tried to back it up on my CCTV like about 50 times and it was like corrupted. It just wouldn't work, and I kept on putting the USB back in and restarting it and doing it over and over again, and eventually it just kind of flashed on the screen and kind of glitched into life, and it backed it up onto this USB stick, which when I got brought to me in like September at Haytor Ward 2019, after they'd visited, I believe on the 19th or 20th of April, the mock-up file had been put on instead. It's completely different to the file that I'd originally captured, which promoted the police to come round 3 times to my house while the streamers were there and my CCTV had gone down to investigate a stolen Facebook password which had been reported by another family member of mine. Securely store evidence and share it with trusted third parties, solicitors or NGOs, to prevent tampering. I wish I'd made some backup copies of that. I think I did upload it to Twitter actually at the time, wasn't really sure what to do with it. Community support. Engage with local victim support groups or fraud awareness campaigns which may provide resources or escalate concerns to authorities. Platforms like Nextdoor or community forums can help identify other victims, strengthening collective action. That's something, if you've been a victim of that, then like you think someone's dressed up as a copper and come to see you, then get in touch with me by all means. Addressing complicity. The hypothesis of widespread police complicity is serious but lacks corroborating evidence in the public domain. Historical cases like the 2003 Secret Policeman documentary exposing racism show that systemic issues can persist, but they do not confirm uniform provision or active facilitation of impersonation. The IOPC's 2022 report on police corruption notes that corruption undermines public trust, but emphasises that most officers act with integrity. Allegations of complicity would require robust evidence, such as internal communications or whistleblower testimony. Limitations and gaps. Data scarcity is a first problem. There are no categorised UK database specifically tracking police impersonation incidents involving uniforms. I wonder why. Making frequency estimates approximate. Documentary specificity. Without the exact inside-out episode details, I relied on the 2015 BBC investigation, which aligns closely with your description. Further details from you regarding the regional year might be able to narrow it down. It was like I can't even remember. I found it on the internet, and I quoted it. I had a link to it, but the link I might stick a link to the report in the description. Complicity allegations. The hypothesis of senior police complicity is speculative and not supported by public evidence. It's just my hypothesis for this scenario, because it would kind of present the futility and hopelessness of having evidence and not knowing what to do with it, which is kind of the position I was in. Proving such claims could require would require whistleblower accounts or leaked documents, which are rare. International escalation. Interpol and Europol have limited direct engagement with civilians, communicating complicating escalation without NCA involvement. Recommendations for victims: prioritise reporting to the IPC or the NCA, document all the evidence and seek legal advice. Media exposure can pressure authorities but carries risk. For policy, 2015 BBC investigation underscored the need for stricter controls on police uniform sales. The government could mandate licensing for retailers and criminalise unauthorised possession of police insignia. For research, criminologists should advocate for a national study on police impersonation to quantify its prevalence and its impact. If you have specific details about the Inside Out episode, you let them know. I can refine this response. I hope this provides a comprehensive overview on the available evidence. So I would like to, as a criminologist, advocate for a national study on police impersonation and the data. The government and the police, please put together a database with all the instances where people have reported or it's been known that somebody dressed in a copper's uniform who wasn't a copper turned up at the scene of a crime and nothing ever happened about that. And whether they're using, like, as a billionaire, I'm sure you could probably stick, like, I'm sure people who are like very wealthy could probably just get a car and make it look like a police car. But my understanding and feeling is that they use real police vehicles, and it's the kind of chief superintendent and like management who mandate this. Like, they know about it, they know that it happens, and so they don't do anything about it. Like, it's kind of like a necessary evil. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really know much about it. I'm going to put some more. Look at the bags under my eyes. It's dreadful, isn't it? I'm going to put some more of my Lancome under eye stuff on. There we go. That'll make me look a bit less gaunt. So I wrote in one of my videos, I had a video on this YouTube channel, Brodie McLeod 888, and I wrote in one of the videos, I used to make movies, I'm shit at IT, I used to upload my CCTV footage of the police in my house when they came to visit me. There's like probably 6 or 7 different videos, you know, of varying lengths where people have come to see me. And I think there was probably like 3 or 4 that weren't genuine police. The file of the lady with red hair never made it to the internet. I think I did put it up on Twitter. It was on Twitter servers at one point, but yeah, the file that I ended up with is just one that doesn't evidence anything, with the same police officer and somebody else. Don't want to make sort of baseless allegations and present my opinion or my paranoia as fact, and I don't want to scare anybody into thinking that the police aren't real, or for you to think that I think that I don't trust the police or that they're all impersonators or I've got imposter syndrome or anything like that, because as you can see, these crimes do take place, and woeful was the term used to describe the investigation into this by the relevant police force. If they're conducting woeful investigations and there's no data collation on this like really relevant criminological data set in our communities to keep us safe, that kind of is indicative, I feel, that the hypothesis might be right. I'm not pointing the finger at senior police officers, but I reckon it's a culture of kind of knowledge of these things happening, and yeah, I think that I wrote a video I was using Windows Movie Maker as a professional laptop user and shit detective in 2019, or in like 2016. I had them from 2016, 2017 and 2018, and then in 2019. And like anyone who saw the videos on my YouTube channel, they weren't like kind of like mock-ups, like I was living on benefits. I didn't arrange for these actors. If they just see, like, you know, putting it on YouTube, you'd think, well, if it was on YouTube, why didn't they get in trouble? But it's like, you know, just because someone's put a picture of 2 people who aren't police talking to them on YouTube from their home CCTV, if they haven't reported it to the police, then they will just ignore it. Do you know what I mean? Like, it did make it into the public domain. It had like thousands of views, but yeah, they just didn't do anything about it. And there is further escalation channels that I can go through, but it's quite dangerous it was really scary when the police came around those 3 times. And then I was sectioned for the rest of the year. And yeah, like I wrote Stranger Things Have Been Known. Nothing to do with the series Stranger Things, but I wrote in the preamble to one of these videos because I'd read about this Inside Out documentary, and I was like, I wrote in a kind of just the intro screen where you can put text on Windows Movie Maker, which you can't even use, it doesn't exist anymore. I've got to learn to use proper editing software if I want to make YouTube videos now, except for these shit ones I make on my phone. I just think that people should know that it happens, and I don't really know, I think they've got fake IDs, like I've got it's not fake, it's real, but like I've got an ID badge with my name on it, you know, I got it for a couple of quid on Amazon, and yeah, you can get hold of that kind of thing, and people who are worth a lot of money, you know, sometimes the only thing more dangerous than somebody with nothing to lose is somebody who stands to lose anything, everything even. You know, someone who stands to lose everything is more dangerous, and having evidence of police corruption, not a safe thing to be sat on. You've got to kind of do something with it or destroy it. Like, it's, yeah, it's not something you want to kind of like take a breather and sleep on and kind of like, maybe I'll report this to somebody and, you know, indict loads of local police who indiscriminately are involved in all sorts of conflicts of interests and community problems, and you know, they're not perfect people. I don't think there's any such thing as a bent police officer. I think they're all bent, basically. I don't think you can speak to anybody. I like police and I respect them. They've saved me on several occasions, and I hope that they will come and raid, you know, places where I'm being a victim of crime, and they'll arrest people and protect me. Like, but they haven't always done that. You know, they have helped me out in the past, but they've also fucked me over too. And I reckon some of the people who fucked me over weren't even police at all. But yeah, Stranger Things Have Been Known is what I wrote in the preamble to one of these videos, than people impersonating police. And you can make your own mind up about what you think. My ramblings kind of truly represent. But yeah, I did a kind of a big investigation into it, and I tried to escalate it to the appropriate bodies in 2019 or like 2020, 2021. I don't have the original file anymore. It would have gone viral, it would have got like millions of hits if I'd taken the file of the woman with the red hair, put that on the internet, which they were terrified I was going to do. Anyway, I don't want to be accusatory, defamatory, libelous, slanderer. But yeah, I will leave that with you. Do your own research into it, and if you do see somebody that looks like they're wearing a uniform from the bill, when you've just heard somebody screaming, or someone being walked past your house at gunpoint, or somebody trying to come and murder you by attacking your house with hammers and bats, like happened to me, and police turn up and they're not real police, then or if you catch them on CCTV and then they try and destroy the evidence by destroying you, then use the appropriate channels that are listed on ChatGPT, and keep liking, following, subscribing, and spending 33 minutes and 37 seconds of your life listening to me, because I'm a very interesting man, and I'm actually quite well intentioned and well informed, and aphoristic, amiable, and personable, and I just wish the best for everybody in the community going forward. And I don't really want to persecute or punish anybody, but I do kind of have to stand up for myself, because if I don't, then there's other innocent parties who are going to suffer, and the manifestation of context that takes within the kind of like realms of right and wrong is complex. But yeah, cheers for watching.